about what China did in the last 100 years, so we understand better this project of Marxist China, which started with the first chairman of the Communist Party, which was actually not Mao Zedong, but a guy called Chen Duxiu. And Chen Duxiu, who served as the first general secretary of the party, later in life denounced Mao's communism and even Stalin's Soviet dictatorship, saying that they were really they were antithetic to democratic institutions, and of course it was ultimately Mao Zedong who enforced some of the most repressive policies ever. One of the first things, as you know, was to take the guns of everybody, because that's the first thing the communists, the socialists do, is to take your guns. But the biggest victims of the Chinese Communist Party oppression have been, of course, the Chinese people. In 1989, as we all know, up to 10,000 civilians were killed in the Tiananmen Square massacre. And unfortunately, we all remember the scene of the famous citizen that stood in front of those tanks of the Chinese Communist Party and basically set fire to himself, gave his life up to this ideal of wanting to get free of the oppression of the Chinese Communist Party. But the People's Republic of China has been also engaging currently in a genocide against the Turkic Muslim Uyghur population, as we all know. And it's estimated that roughly 25,000 Uyghurs are killed every year for organ harvesting alone. So they use this Islamic minority in China simply for their organs or for forcing them into these concentration camps where they basically work for free, making parts for big companies here in the West. So this celebration is the celebration of death. It's the celebration of death, and it's the celebration of a communist nation, which is, of course, hailing the savior of the Xi Jinping as the savior of this party. And we can all see them, for those who are viewing this show, not only listening to it on my YouTube channel, which is called The Top Secret, The Leo Zagami Show, and also on the other YouTube channels, Zagamiana Italiana and Zagamiana Italiani Canale di Emergenza. These are like channels which we have created just to bring you also the visual experience of the show aside from the radio experience, which of course is brought to you live on Aftermath FM and on the Global Enlightenment Radio Network. So going back to this century of death and despair in the world's most populous country, there has been also the persecution of the Tibetan people who are forced into labor camps, accompanied by indoctrination, intrusive surveillance, and harsh punishments on a daily basis. The Dalai Lama alleges that 1.2 million Tibetans died under Chinese rule. The biggest victims, though, like I said earlier, are the Chinese people, especially because between 1979 and 2015, they have been subject to this one-child policy enforcement, this contraception and forced abortion if the control failed, which is estimated that roughly 400 million births were prevented under this draconian measure. And there is images that have circulated on various documentaries of fetuses just piled up on top of each other, disgusting scenes. Let's not forget that in the early years of Mao Zedong dictatorship, Chinese people were so desperate that they ended up eating fetuses and eating their own babies. So Chinese communists ate their own babies. It's sad and it's shocking to see the West and media's, mainstream media from the West, like CNN, having words or even of encouragement and of, how can we say, I mean, the CNN should be renamed, CNN should be renamed Chinese Communist Network. That's it. It's a Chinese news network. That would be definitely probably more suited for what they are. To actually comment positively on 100 years of communism in China, you have to be out of your mind. But that's what CNN is, unfortunately. Let's also not forget that communism is Satanism. Communism fights God. Communism is for atheism. Communism, you see, the aesthetics even of communism are not only Orwellian, but are satanic. And they all look robotic because they are all threatened and they are all subject to a life that it would be unthinkable for us here in the West. Definitely unthinkable. For Asian people, this is normal, but for us, definitely, I mean, for some Asian people, maybe it's normal because other Asian people, of course, hate Marxism or communism. However, the great leap forward made in the socio-economic program by Mao Zedong between 1958 and 1962 was not really something that arrived without consequence. Roughly 45 million people died of starvation in China because of torture, beatings, and forced labor in the initial period in the most crucial period of Mao Zedong's legacy. And let's not forget that the Chinese Communist Party celebrates Mao Zedong as a sort of god these days. They forced in some churches the image of Mao Zedong to be worshipped. The Vatican has been silent about China because they receive from China approximately $2 billion a year. They don't, and that's why China never receives any criticism from the Vatican since Pope Francis arrived. Because since Pope Francis arrived in 2013, these people are basically, Chinese Communist Party has bought the Vatican. That doesn't say anything anymore regarding the persecutions, even in Hong Kong, the threat to take over Taiwan. The Catholic Church has even broke a deal with the Chinese Communist Party in 2018. This deal has brought to the unprecedented decision by the Vatican to recognize the patriotic Catholic Church, which was started by the Chinese Communist Party, with no valid apostolic lineage. So basically there is cardinals, now bishops, that come out of this church that have not a real connection with Jesus Christ, but rather with this monstrosity which is communism. So it's with great sadness that we see this brainwashing situation continuing, and the media in the West not really being critical enough against this robotic reality. Karl Marx was definitely not only an atheist, but he was a Satanist. He believed in hell, because the moment in which you don't really believe in God, you definitely fall into the hands of the devil. And Karl Marx was somebody who started a perverted ideology. He wasn't though the starter. If we want to really go down to the people who influenced the very birth of communism and influenced Karl Marx himself, then we need to go to the early days of the Illuminati. I've explained a lot of all this in my books, especially in volume 5 of my Confessions, as well as volume 4. And the fact that people now are witnessing this constant rise to power of the Chinese, that goes along then with people like the World Economic Forum that is proposing a psychological plan to overcome vaccine hesitancy. I mean, the Chinese have unleashed on the world a virus on behalf of the New World Order, on behalf of the deep state, on behalf of the Jesuits and the Sabbatean Frankists that control it. And now they are even giving an award to that laboratory in Wuhan, which has basically caused the death of so many people around the world and the bankruptcy of so many activities because of the forced lockdowns and so on. But all this goes into the scheme of things of the Illuminati. And there is a figure in particular which is responsible for all this, which is known as, known for those who don't know very well the history of the Illuminati. His name is Filippo Buonarroti. Filippo Buonarroti is the guy who actually influenced Karl Marx. Filippo Buonarroti was born in 1761, he died in 1837, was an Italian utopian socialist, as described in that way. He was a writer, an agitator, a Freemason and conspirator who was initially active in the lodges in Tuscany, then went to Corsica and then to France during the first stages of the produce of what was the revolution. And his History of Babeau's Conspiracy of Equals, published in 1828, became a quintessential text for revolutionaries, inspiring Karl Marx and also another important figure, Louis-Auguste Blanqui, who was a French socialist and political activist, notable for his revolutionary theory, which is known as Blanquism. So Filippo Buonarroti became involved with the Illuminati. Filippo Buonarroti became involved with the Illuminati, and the Illuminati, from the initial stages that were moved by the initial project that was put together by Adam Weishaupt and Baron Knig, went on to become a much more progressive form of secret society that, of course, influenced, that we all know very much, the Freemasonry of the time. Now, why we should focus on this Filippo Buonarroti? Because he's a guy that is not much discussed. I discuss it, of course, in my books. And in these books, I explain the importance. Now, he was born in Pisa in what was Tuscany at the time, which was the Duchy of Tuscany. He was from the local nobility. He studied jurisprudence at the University of Pisa, where he then founded what was seen as a subversive kind of paper that was called the Gazzetta Universale, that came out in 1787. He joined Freemasonry in 1786, and at that point he expressed support for the French Revolution. He traveled to Corsica, which was at that point French, and spread the revolutionary message that he had contained in this publication that he then spread, this newspaper that he created at that time, the revolutionary newspaper known as the Giornale Patriottico di Corsica. Because in Corsica, they don't only speak French, but they actually speak Italian, because before being French, Corsica was Italian. In Corsica, Buonarroti joined the Jacobin Club and became a friend of the Bonapartes. The Bonapartes, the House of Bonaparte is, of course, the family of Napoleon. Buonarroti was eventually expelled, though, from Corsica, returned to his native Tuscany, but in 1793 he eventually went to Paris and became a member of the Society of the Pantheon, and Robespierre placed him in charge of organizing the expatriates Italian revolutionaries, which he did with a base in Nice, which is very close to the Italian border. After denouncing somebody denounced his activities, he, though, got by special decree his French citizenship in 1793, and from that moment onwards his position also in the various secret societies of the Illuminati network started to grow. He actually became responsible for creating his own branch, and his revolutionary principles are the ones that then were picked up by people like Karl Marx. So that's why I am talking about all this, because the history of the Illuminati, the real Illuminati, I'm not talking here about some demented conspiracy theory made up by somebody who calls the Illuminati anything, even Freemasonry, when not every branch of Freemasonry is connected to the Illuminati. But in this case, Buonarroti was part of these early revolutionaries in France, which basically formed a cornerstone for the people who came later, like Karl Marx. He also met and was praised by Bakunin, who created the more anarchic movement. And he built on an international scale a very elaborate underground network of Freemasons, Illuminati, that will work for a social revolution and for the republicanization of Europe, because they wanted to eliminate all the monarchies. Now, it's very important that we understand all this is history, and is also the history of the authentic Illuminati, which is described very well in this book called The Secret School of Wisdom, The Authentic Ritual and Doctrines of the Illuminati, which is edited by Joseph Wages and Reinhard Marker, and translated by this guy called Yeva Singh Anand, that unfortunately ended up dead after he translated the Rituals of the Illuminati in mysterious circumstances after he joined the Ordo Templi Orientis. Welcome everybody. It's 29 minutes past the hour. This is Aftermath FM. But we're also broadcasting the show on the Global Enlightenment Radio Network and on a number of YouTube channels. This is the Leo Zagami Show. my own unusual experience within the New World Order that is described very well in my books that you can, of course, purchase if you go to my website. You will find all the links at leozagami.com. It's an experience that, of course, is different from the experience of any other ordinary journalist. So I'm trying to explain here, going back in time and trying to explain what really gave birth to this monstrosity which is now taking over the planet. You see, when these people created the Illuminati network, people like Buonarroti, people like Weishaupt, they kind of conspired to keep certain secrets only to the higher degrees. And in the case of Buonarroti, the existence of the higher degrees was actually unknown to the lower. So this network used other secret societies, including Freemasonry. So the Illuminati arrived to and used a number, even if they were eliminated with the name order of the Illuminati, they then regenerated with other names. And at one point, when they eventually started to filter their own philosophy, they managed to pollute the world with their own creation, which is basically communism. The communism that we see in China is a creation of the Illuminati. That's why China is now the playground, the place that is the favorite place for the establishment, for the Illuminati establishment, and for the Jesuits, who, by the way, like I wrote in volume 4 of my Confessions, have a long-standing tradition of relations with China since the days of Matteo Ricci, which was one of the first missionaries of the Jesuit order to go to China and basically establish a link with the emperor back then, when there was still an emperor. Here, as you can see, you are watching, for those people who are, of course, watching my show, Tiananmen Square, and these impressive images of the parade, the military parade that was done in front of President Xi Jinping. President Xi Jinping that, like I said, threatened the rest of the world, and without any hesitancy, basically said that he will smash their faces on the Great Wall of steel if they attempted to mingle with Chinese affairs. Going back to the subject of today, which is the World Economic Forum and their piece authored by three professionals in marketing, Rohit Deshpande, Sébastien Secrège, and professor of marketing at the Harvard Business School, this guy called Sébastien Secrège, so a big guy, then another guy who's also at the university in Sydney called Ofer Smith. So all these people, including a guy who is Imran Kurim, who actually is here in California, the University of California in Irvine, professor of marketing at the Paul Marriage School of Business. Well, all these people created a plan. They said people are hesitant to take the vaccine. How are we going to make them take these injections, these COVID injections? And they have created solutions to inform, persuade, and convince people. And they think that this manipulation, this mind control, will boost the vaccine's communication efforts. So they want to use psychology to promote vaccines, noting how the ordinary folks make decisions in a process of thinking, feeling, and taking action. The entire process is replicated when an individual has to decide to get a COVID-19 injection declared at that point. This is how the authors see this whole thing. But these authors are people who work for the World Economic Forum. The World Economic Forum is putting basically a plan of misinformation and a war on your feelings to get those people who are still hesitant to take the vaccine. They know that those who oppose the injections have strong feelings against it, like myself, for example. But they say they can improve their feelings about the vaccines by operating in a particular way. In a particular way, and touching especially on the emotional fear-mongering that is used against vaccine skeptics. You see, all this doesn't happen in a country like China, because in China, they didn't even operate a massive vaccination effort, and nobody's saying anything about the billions of people who are in China vaccinated with their own vaccine that apparently is not even working that well, but who knows? Who knows? Because now we have also the evidence that apparently a vaccine was already made in the early stages by somebody who then suddenly disappeared, died in mysterious circumstances, and that was a Chinese scientist who worked for the Chinese military-industrial complex. So the Chinese managed to pollute the world on behalf of the New World Order, on behalf of people like Dr. Fauci, on behalf of people like the EcoHealth Alliance, that of course, the EcoHealth Alliance, as we all know, is a company that has been used to filter money to the Wuhan lab by companies like even Google. So we are watching the tribute that this year Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party is doing to celebrate their 100th anniversary. And all this was calculated when they released that virus that has basically ruined the life of many people around the world. So we needed to understand that the problem here is that in the next few months, they will try to do anything to implement the vaccines, and the safety concerns are basically ignored, because for these people, the rest of the world needs to be eliminated. The rest of the world can take any kind of weird vaccine. They don't care. The rest of the world is spendable. They want to protect only their own. There is actually a lot of talk about the fact that the military scientists in China have already devised a new form of virus that will only attack people from a different ethnicity, that basically leaving out the Chinese. So a specific kind of bacteriological warfare addressed only to a specific race. The Chinese are the ones who eat dogs. The Chinese are the ones that have no soul. And that is because, unfortunately, communism has killed their soul. Now, the last people who have some kind of soul in the Chinese culture are the people from the island of Taiwan. And that's why they want to threaten Taiwan and tell them, listen, we are ready to conquer you. They said it. President Xi Jinping said it. So China is winning this war. China is winning this war because here in the United States, They have bought out the whole Biden family. And so the war of words, which is moved by Joe Biden from the White House against China, is definitely a war of words. It's not a real war. These robots, these Chinese robots that unfortunately are hundreds and hundreds of millions of individuals who have a different vision of life. And that vision was described by President Xi Jinping, who said that socialism is basically, socialism rules, socialism is the only solution for China. Newsweek said that Xi Jinping says that they will become the dominant power, but China is basically already the dominant power, and by 2028 they might already be the #1 economy in the world. And Newsweek, of course, has been commenting on the events of the celebration, the 100th anniversary, saying that the paramount leader who donned the mouse suit while other officials arrived in formal attire told that in this at Tiananmen Square that the party has accomplished its centennial goal of creating a moderately prosperous society. So you can't have a great prosperous society. In the Chinese view, you have to have a moderately prosperous society. That is really the view of the World Economic Forum by 2030. You own nothing, and you are given everything you have by the state. You are depending on the state. And this happens in China, of course, in the People's Republic of China, which has celebrated their centennial, their 100-year goal of building China into a great modern socialist country, which, of course, in their eyes, maybe is a great success. Xi Jinping also praised the party early history. The fact that it started in the years just after the Russia's October Revolution. The Chinese leader's speech executed a sense of bullishness, even assertiveness, as he pronounced China's readiness to fend off building and oppression by foreign forces by smashing their faces, their heads, if they mingle with Chinese affairs. It's, of course, for us here in America unthinkable to see a military parade like this one, which we have seen in Tiananmen Square, which represents everything Orwellian. When George Orwell wrote 1984, he was viewing the Soviet Union, that at the time, of course, was more successful than China. But already we were in the early stages of the communist Chinese takeover when George Orwell wrote 1984. I think that compared to the era of Brezhnev, Khrushchev, and all those leaders of the Russian Communist Party and their military parades on the Red Square, well, I must say that this parade, this military parade made in Tiananmen Square is even more scary. The one thing is, there is something that definitely accumulates the two events. I was a child when I used to watch these military parades on the Red Square, and I was pretty shocked by the fact that nobody laughed. Nobody laughed. When I went the first times in Russia, to visit Russia starting from the middle of the 90s, after the end of the Soviet Union, I started to go to Russia. They told me, Leo, if you want to pass as a Russian, you never have to laugh. Of course, things have changed now in Russia in the last 25 years, fortunately. But still, there is, of course, a dominant force which comes from the old communist elite, because that's what we have. I mean, Vladimir Putin is the result of that. And it's the result of another experiment made by the Illuminati, which was the Soviet Union. An experiment that didn't work out as well as the Chinese one. The Chinese one, unfortunately, has worked out. The attempt to destabilize the Chinese Communist Party in 1989 was probably the only attempt. But, like I said earlier, it ended up with over 10,000 deaths. And definitely they were not successful. The Chinese became more repressive, and the Chinese communist culture was not touched at all. So let's go in some other news of the day, as we have discussed enough this 100-year anniversary, and we have also discussed partly this plan by the World Economic Forum, which works hand in hand, let's say, with the organizations like the WHO and all these organizations that are in one way or another connected to Communist China. Let's move forward because we have more news for today in my show here, in the Leo Zagami Show, which is being broadcast currently on Aftermath FM and on the Global Enlightenment Radio Network, aside from a few YouTube channels that still carry on the Leo Zagami Show. If you want to share the Leo Zagami Show on your own YouTube channel, you're free to do so. And now let's go to Dubai. Dubai saw the arrest of one of the biggest Nigerian scammers of all time. For years, this insane character went around the internet parading as an influencer on Instagram and so on. But in reality, he was secretly this billionaire, known as Billionaire Gucci Master or Hush Papi on Instagram. His true name is Ramon Olorunwa Abbas. Was basically living a life of luxury in front of his 2 million followers. And of course, if you live a life of luxury, somebody is going to start investigating on what you're doing, what you're not doing. So they started to investigate on how he obtained this luxury life. And they ended up discovering that, of course, he was one of the main people behind the infamous Nigerian scams that we have seen for years, and that have, of course, created many problems for a lot of people who unfortunately have believed in them. So the Dubai police intervened, and billionaire Gucci Master was eventually arrested. Here's the scene.
Dubai police have once again solved yet another case involving an international online scammer known as Raymond Abbas, but who goes by Hush Puppy on social media platforms. In less than just 4 months, Dubai's police force was able to solve the new operation dubbed Fox Hunt 2, where 12 other gang members were also arrested. Six raids were carried out simultaneously while the suspects were sleeping in their Dubai residences. After months of investigating and hours of monitoring the gang's social media accounts, a team of highly trained Dubai police officers were able to confirm the gang's whereabouts and fraudulent activities. The Nigerian Instagram celebrity, who was arrested on multiple fraud charges for crimes committed in different parts of the world, boasted about his wealth and expensive possessions on social media, claiming he is a successful businessman. Little did Abbas know, Dubai e-police teams were tracking his every move and taking note of all his social media activities. Hush Puppy and his team of scammers were known for creating fake pages for existing websites in order to redirect victims' payments to their own accounts. Dubai police have also found that the gang specialised in hacking corporate emails and sending fake messages to clients in order to redirect financial transfers and people's bank details to their own accounts. Before their arrest, Abbas and his crew members were responsible for scams amounting to 1.6 billion dirhams. In the operation, police officers were also able to seize items worth more than 150 million dirhams after they claimed 21 computers, 47 smartphones, 15 storage memory devices, and 5 hard disks containing data. 1,926,400 victims. Additionally, 13 luxury cars worth 25 million dirhams were bought by Hush Puppy and his gang, using the money stolen from people who have been scammed. Once again, Dubai's police force has fulfilled its commitment to protecting millions of people, both locally and around the world, from such malicious crimes. It has also reiterated that it will continue to bring all cyber criminals to justice.
Well, it seems like for the Dubai police, this must have been like one of the biggest events ever. But unfortunately, we have been subject for years and years of these Nigerian scams, and the arrest of Hush Puppy is maybe a good sign of things to come. It seems like they were really making incredible also amounts of money. So let's move forward, because of course we have a lot of news today, but it was important to also finally see the arrest of these Nigerian scammers. After years and years we have been talking about them, especially because some of them have been using my own image. They have used my own image, they used my own image in connection to a supposed Illuminati order. They got people to even send them money using my image. I actually was kicked out of Instagram, and these Nigerians was capable of keeping Leo Zagami accounts still on Instagram, where they were trying to fraud people. So I'm very happy about the fact that these Nigerian scammers are finally in jail, especially because using my image and making gullible people send them up to $2,000 for a supposed membership in the Illuminati is something truly ridiculous. I hope nobody ever believes in such rubbish. And now more news, of course, here from the United States of America, where we have seen the Trump org CFO surrender to the New York prosecutor. He, of course, has claimed he's in no way connected to any illegal activities, but the accusation of tax evasion that they're trying to move against the Trump organization is definitely instrumental to the fact that Donald J. Trump has, in a veiled way, but not so veiled, really recandidated himself for 2024, and he's been always present in the political arena, even after the end of his presidency. So let's see what has happened earlier today.
The Trump Organization's longtime chief financial officer surrendered to authorities Thursday morning. CFO Alan Weiselberg was seen entering the building housing the Manhattan District Attorney's office. Weiselberg and the Trump Organization are expected to face criminal charges in a probe by Manhattan DA Cyrus Vance. People familiar with the case told Reuters Thursday's charges focus on allegations Weiselberg and other executives received corporate perks and benefits, such as rent-free apartments and leased cars, without reporting them on their tax returns. Trump himself is not expected to be charged, though prosecutors have said their probe into his company is continuing.
Well, we're very proud of our company. We've built one of the great real estate companies of the world.
In a statement, the Trump Organization accused prosecutors of using Weiselberg as a pawn to go after the former president. Charges could increase pressure on Weiselberg to cooperate with the investigation, which he has resisted. Weiselberg's cooperation could be crucial in any future case against his longtime boss.
Wow. So they're really trying to get Trump in any way possible and imaginable, but in the end, really, let me tell you that it doesn't really seem like such a big deal. It seems like a nothing burger against the Trump Organization, this whole thing. However, let's go to what has happened yesterday with Trump visiting the border. Trump visiting, of course, the border with Mexico in a visit that was much more successful than the one made by Kamala Harris. So the former US president has definitely had more success. And his arrival, of course, with the music from Lara Manningham, Gloria, and ended up with the usual YMCA. So YMCA and the Village People, even at the border with Donald J. Trump, back in action and back with the American people. You know, there has been actually some controversy on the use of this song, but it seems like Trump likes it very much, so they keep on using it. So Trump arrived with Governor Abbott to an ecstatic crowd, and then in the evening there was a conference, an interview with Sean Hannity in a public town hall meeting. And is during that interview with Sean Hannity in this town hall that Trump unveiled his decision in a veiled way, let's say, but still unveiled his decision to recandidate himself in 2024 for the White House. And of course, this is a very important moment that I'm sure made Sean Hannity's day. Let's see it all together from yesterday evening, Fox.
We don't have a lot of time, but let's talk about your future plans. Now, I have a fun... Let me ask the crowd of everybody here, would you like to see the president run again in 2024? You're not going to answer, but I have to ask. Where are you in the process of, let me ask you this, without giving the answer what the answer is, have you made up your mind? Yes. I think you got it right. Yeah.
Wow. So that was it. He has made up his mind, and it seems almost inevitable that his decision will be to, of course, recandidate himself in 2024. In the meantime, of course, support the midterm elections in 2022. What he said during his intervention there, his speech at the border, was very much a criticism respect to what the Biden administration has been doing. And there has been a lot of criticism actually from within the Biden administration against Kamala Harris. There has been an article by Political that has exposed Kamala's toxic working environment. So the vice president office is apparently full of dissent and dysfunction, and the aides are not very happy with this figure. Let's remember to everybody, Kamala Harris was not really elected by anybody, and she was never really successful here in California. No, Jimmy, Kamala is not really a person that had any political success. I don't know how she ever made it in the White House. What do you think of Kamala? The worst product that California ever give to the world of politics, is that maybe the right definition, Jimmy?
Well, let me just say, I can't verify it for myself, but I heard she polished a lot of doorknobs to get to where she went.
Yes, well, we all know that she was. Let's say that she worked very well with her mouth.
There you go.
In the early stages of her career, but now there is this whole controversy that was started by Political, Jimmy, regarding the fact that Kamala Harris really has a lot of internal problems in her office, and it seems like a lot of people in the administration, in the Joe Biden administration, are not really happy with her, with the handling of the border visit, which was seen as chaotic, and she was, of course, criticized very much for going only after 90 days from being nominated the border czar. In interviews, 22 current and former vice presidential aides, an associate of Vice President Harris and Biden, described the tense and at times dull office atmosphere. What do you think of that, Jimmy?
Well, I mean, empathically speaking, when I look at her, she looks like the kind of lady that would have a messy apartment. She looks like the kind of lady who wouldn't necessarily take out the trash in a timely manner. So I could only imagine what it must be like to be her in a vice president situation where there's probably papers everywhere. It doesn't look like anything's organized. She really doesn't have anything intellectual to add to the conversation besides that laugh. It's like the snout of the jackal, opens up and she starts to cackle. And I don't know, man.
How is it possible that the state of California had only a person like her to offer to the political establishment? I mean, are the people in California really so retarded to vote for somebody like her, to support somebody like her? Because could they see through her phoniness? Could they not realize that she's completely phony?
I think Californians are pretty savvy. I think a lot of people are sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I think if somebody comes along with a solution to some of these problems, I think that person's going to get elected. Now, as far as her getting in there, obviously, let's just be honest, okay? She's a woman of color, okay? They want to get a woman into the White House. What better woman of color to have in there? They cover all their bases. And I'm not saying that in a negative way. So people know I'm not racist. Don't matter to me. But what I am saying is when you're using a demographic specifically from a marketing perspective, and you want to market something to a people, I think at the right moment, at the right time, clamoring for a female presence around the presidency, being one step, a heartbeat away from being president of the United States. Could you imagine what would happen if Kamala Harris took the wheel of the United States of America? Where do you think we'd be going? Because I mean, obviously, she doesn't have a clue about just about anything. She was number 13 in the race for the presidency. I mean, there was so.
And actually, the problem regarding the way she treats staffers already came out during her dysfunctional campaign in the 2020 presidential race, when she was the candidate for a period of time before they decided who basically was going to the White House, which was, of course, Joe Biden. She was then picked up by Joe Biden, probably simply because of the color of her skin, simply because she represents, she's a woman. And so it's about identity politics more than about substantial politics, about real politics.
Right. I mean, look, if you were trying to build a dynasty, if you thought Joe was going to get 8 years, and then he was going to do so good for those 8 years that somebody might want to vote for his vice president, don't you think they would put somebody in like a Tulsi Gabbard? I mean, don't you think they put a candidate in there that makes sense? She's clearly, you know how a lot of times when they're in there, like people like to say, well, you know, the vice president is the handler. Right, I don't think she's his handler, but she did look like she was hanging on his neck like a vulture when he was signing stuff one time I saw. So, but I don't think she's a handler. She doesn't come across as a handler. But then again, maybe she's the master of illusion and master of disguises. Maybe that's Hillary in there underneath.
But we're living in a very crazy world. You remember the other day I showed what happened with that trans and that. Exposing her genitals to children in that place, in that spa in LA. Remember when I showed that? And now in this crazy world where Kamala Harris rules, in this clown world, the CEO of Trans Group, which I don't know, is some kind of trans group, complained about this whole thing. Saying it was horrible and it was an act of violence towards his gender identity. So, I mean, we are living definitely in a world where, I mean, you can go around showing your penis to little children and it's okay as long as you say you are a transsexual.
Well, you know, all I know is they don't seem too confident that this team is going 8 years to me. I mean, it doesn't seem like a confidence. It seems like some sort of a... I don't even know who else was there. Who else could they have installed in there besides Biden? Who else?
Of course, we have other figures in the Democratic Party, but they are not much better.
Gavin,
including Andrew Yang or whatever. He wasn't even able to conduct himself across the more local elections in New York, the recent elections that are going on in New York City, which are themselves really also chaotic. As everything that goes on in these libtarded cities. But changing a bit argument, today we also had, unfortunately, the judge giving a negative answer to the request by Britney Spears. She wanted to be removed by her father's conservatorship, but fortunately the judge decided otherwise. What's your take on that, Jim?
Well, she went off the reservation, and shaved her head. So, you know.
That was a long time ago, Jim.
It doesn't matter. Yeah, that doesn't matter, though. That doesn't matter because when she went off the reservation, she lost all of her ability to, you know, have any of her income or her capital. So her family's got her money locked up and tied up. I mean, look at that song she wrote, I'm Your Slave. Yeah, she's your slave. She is a look. She came out of the Disney operation. This is an iconic archetype set out there to program your daughters. Okay, they start out all sweet and innocent, and the next thing you know, they're shaving their heads and going off the reservation. Whereas Christina Aguilera, she was a genie in a bottle. Let me rub you the right way, or whatever, and then she's lap dancing Method Man in a bare knuckle boxing match in a video called Dirty. So Miley Cyrus, look at Miley Cyrus, same thing. These are little icons that grow up with your daughters, and your daughters idolize these girls, these stars, these mega stars. And then, how much can somebody take? Only imagine what must go on. When you're a young person and you're in the entertainment industry, you're around adults all the time. You think you're an adult. You act like an adult. You can pretty much do anything an adult does because you're a star on the TV show, or you're the singer, or you're the whatever you are. So you get away with anything. You can be 17, 16, 15, 13, man. Dude's drunk. The producer's drunk. Next thing you know, boom. You know what I mean? So I feel sorry for the girl. I feel sorry that she had to go through what she went through. And, I wish she would be able to, maybe she'd do what Prince did and get rid of her name and start, make a symbol. Because that's how Prince got out of his contractual obligations. She's maybe not going to get that money that her daddy has, but maybe she could generate herself some new income under a new deal. Where
we know that, of course, those days are over.
Yeah.
Those days are over. I mean, she's no more the star she used to be, but most of all, she wants her conservatorship back because she even has a spiral. She's not permitted to have children or to get married. I think that is a little bit over the top.
That's what happens when you're an indentured servant to you're a slave to your masters. There's nobody makes it down in Hollywood without a master, do they?
Yeah.
So,
ultimately the master of all these people is Satan.
Well, there you go. And let me just say, look at the two, between the two, Christina Aguilera and Britney Spears. Both different women identify with those characters, but Christina Aguilera went a different way now. She got older, she gained a little weight. She became a judge on a TV show. So she has a whole career now. She can go off into the Vegas and sing slow love songs, for the rest of her life, just like these other stars. But Britney Spears is exactly the opposite. Why did she go the route that she went? Because there's other people that have gone that same way. What was that red-haired girl that went wild for a while? I can't remember her name. Begins with an L or something. Anyway, you don't see her around anymore either. So you go off the reservation and you start saying stuff you're not supposed to be saying. You start doing stuff you're not supposed to be doing. You get cut off, Leo. You cut off, man. You got nothing.
Absolutely. Well, the handlers are, of course, the people behind the scenes. In this case, the father, and he seems to be pretty much into wanting to keep the conservatorship for himself. Going back instead to the theme of being possessed, because we know that most of these people in Hollywood in some way are possessed. The actual subject of the exorcism was, of course, launched by a film called The Exorcist that most of us have seen, and that since the 70s has launched this terrifying thing, which is the exorcism, which is done when a woman is or a man is possessed, and they start at times even levitating. Now, we never really had any testimonies regarding the actual levitation of a woman, but here there is now a testimony which I have that I would like to
this
make
was happening.
Yes, hopefully I will be able to play it, and it's basically a testimony regarding the terrifying exorcism that went on for a period of time, a chilling story that actually demonstrates that levitating people that are possessed exist. They are not just the subject of Hollywood films. Here we go. Let's see if we can get the audio of this testimony by an expert on the levitation of a woman for a number of days. So it was a repeating occurrence. It wasn't just something that appeared out of the blue. Seems like we're having some problems in getting the audio though. Let's see if we can get it.
Mission Society to get the old.
Here we are. Here we are.
So there was a famous case from South Africa that happened in 1906 with a group called the Marion Hill Mission Society. And I actually reached out to that mission society to get the oldest accounts that they had available and to get permission to reproduce them in the book. And they had a Zulu woman who was living with their mission who became possessed and who reportedly was levitating 4 or 5 feet off the ground on a daily basis. And everyone who lived in this little community all witnessed this. And so we have accounts from multiple people all saying that this happened. The other thing that I found really odd going through this account is they said that when she was levitating, her clothes would levitate too. So for example, if she floated off the bed, her dress wouldn't hang underneath her body. Her dress would cling tightly to the bottom of her body as if she was laying on some sort of invisible table or something like this. And the reason that detail is interesting to me is that I found accounts from the 4th century of possessions in Jerusalem by the graves of the prophets. And it says these women are floating upside down and their clothes cling to their bodies. Their clothes also resist gravity. So it's just an odd detail if someone was making this up, right? The strange detail that the clothes behave in this strange way. So I look at this account and I have to just say either this is all nonsense, right? These priests just said, let's really play a prank on people, or something really unexplainable was happening.
So this was a brief testimony that was given in an article that was published by the Daily Star on this chilling testimonies regarding exorcism, the exorcism phenomena. And there was another article also in the day preceding this one always by the Daily Star regarding Father Malachi Martin, which is somebody we have talked about a lot and who died in 1999 in mysterious circumstances, probably killed by a demon. That's what at least somebody who used to work for the CIA said. And there is an excellent documentary that I saw some time ago regarding this whole subject. I think it was on Netflix. And definitely Father Malachi Martin was somebody who continued in his ministry as an exorcist even after he basically left the Jesuit order and the Vatican to come and live here in the United States of America. And we all know also the great books that he wrote that are some of the first testimonies regarding Satanism in the Vatican, by the way. So a subject of interest, especially for those people who know my books, and in particular, volume 6.66, The Age of Cyber Satan, Artificial Intelligence, and Robotics, a book that you should all have. So